PodcastOne presents the Steve Austin Show Classics.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I'm coming to you from the main streets of Los Angeles, California, here at the compound at 316 Gimmick Street, sitting here in my office with Hershey the Wonder Dog. Hershey laying on the couch, taking, of all things, a cat nap. Hey, man, I just turned on my computer, went down to coldsteel.com, and saw that the Steve Austin Broken Skull knife is up on the website for sale. Man, I'm so happy about this damn knife thing. I've been wanting a damn pocket knife forever because, as I am a big watch fan, I'm a huge knife fanatic. I always have one with me. I've used hundreds of different damn brands of knives. Got introduced to cold steel through my buddy, Josh Barnett. And I tell you what, came out with this knife. And the Broken Skull Steve Austin knife comes in 6 different colors. It comes in orange, which I dig because it's real bright. Coyote tan, that's a cool color. OD green, you can never go wrong with OD green. Pink, yep, I got a pink pocket knife. Everybody needs a knife. Gray and blue. These are some badass knives. Now, if you think about ordering one of these knives, I'm just going to give you a heads up right now. That's a 4-inch blade and about a 5-inch handle. The knife, when you unfold that blade, is 9 1/4 inches long. So I love the damn thing. When I walked in to talk to Lynn Thompson at Cold Steel several months ago on the podcast, I had been talking with Cold Steel about making a thinner, lighter knife. And when I walked into Lynn's office, this very knife was laying on the table. And immediately my eyes were drawn to it because this is a knife I was describing. Cold Steel makes a lot of badass knives, but because of the shorts that I wear out on Broken Skull Challenge and Redneck Island, I like light knives. This thing was on the table, and I said, what is that? Anyway, they went into describing it to me, and we turned this into the Broken Skull Steve Austin knife, and I couldn't be more proud of it and to be in business with Cold Steel Knives. So, man, that thing's over at coldsteel.com. I didn't mean to start a podcast with a damn sales pitch. It ain't, but people have been asking me about this knife ever since we started talking about it on Twitter, and it's finally here. Stay tuned. Down the road, we'll be doing more stuff, but this thing just rolls out. As a matter of fact, as I record this podcast open on Wednesday, on Friday, I go down to do a photo shoot with this knife. I'm going to roll some video footage as well. I'm not ready to take any pictures yet. I'm still working off my beer gut from deer season. That being said, switching to beer, Broken Skull IPA continues to fly off the shelf. I appreciate you guys supporting the beer, man, and it's easy to support because, quite frankly, it's that damn good. It's the best IPA in the United States of America right now, and I'll stand behind that statement. You may have some different taste buds, but that's my take on it, and that's the bottom line. If you ever fly into L.A., hang a left out at that airport and go down to El Segundo. It's a 4-mile drive. Go to 140 Main Street. Tell them Austin sent you. Anyway, if you want to order that across the United States, if you live in a state that can be delivered in, go to InsideTheCellar.com. And if you're in Cali, then you can check it out at Whole Foods and Total Wines. That's all I got to say about that. Holy smokes, man. Broken Skull Challenge was absolutely epic. I've already talked about that. Make sure you catch this Sunday's episode, 9/7 Central. These dudes are crazy that come to the ranch this Sunday on CMT Network. You Comcast people, I'm sorry about your loss. You ain't got CMT no more. But find a way, some way, any way, somehow to watch this episode of Broken Skull Challenge at 8/7 Central. And then, hey, man, if you listen to this show on Thursday, Redneck Island is on tonight, Thursdays, right after Party Down South. Man, I tell you what, this is another good episode. These cats, these young rednecks out there are having a blast. I'm having a blast working with my wonderful co-host, Melissa Rycroft. She is astounding, fun lady to work with. I'm really proud of this show this year. It's been absolutely just a lot of fun. And just going down there and hanging out, and that gym that I train out down there in Lake Hartwell is just absolutely awesome. It's been a great show, and I appreciate you supporting both shows. But it's a great show this year, and I'm glad they cleaned it up from last year. I thought it was a little bit of a train wreck, but nonetheless, man, hey, I tell you what, here's what's going on. I've had an overwhelming amount of reaction support to my emails, to my Twitter account, the Vince Russo on Twitter. Vince Russo came on the show, and we did a Skype conversation where we could see each other on the video, and Vince Russo knocked it out of the damn park. So I was real proud of that podcast, and we got part 2 coming up, and it's as good, if not better, than the first. It's been a long time since I talked to Vince Russo, and, man, me and him just had a lot of fun back in the days when we did work together. So stay tuned. Part 2 is coming up this Tuesday on the Steve Austin Show. I was able to split that up and get 2 podcasts out of it, and this dude drops a lot of knowledge, a lot of passion, first and foremost, about the business and from his perspective. And he always has an interesting perspective, and it's good to reconnect with him. And I appreciate all the emails and all the retweets and all the support that you gave that podcast. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to talk to Vince Russo, probably once, if not twice, before we get to WrestleMania 32 as we continue to watch the process of what the WWE does to put the pieces in place on that chessboard, the pieces being the wrestlers, the talent, and that board being the card that they're going to make for WrestleMania to try to jam, upwards of 100,000 people in the AT&T Stadium on April 3rd. Yours truly, myself, I'll be there in some way, shape, form, capacity. And I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'll be there because it's WrestleMania 32. It is in Dallas, Texas. Those are my old stomping grounds. That's where I started wrestling. And I'm looking forward to going to the Hall of Fame to watch all of the inductees go in, but in particular, Michael P.S. Hayes of the Fabulous Freebirds himself, of course, Buddy Roberts, and Terry Gordy, no longer with us. That being said, man, what a tag team they were. Those guys were ahead of their time, I'd say, by 10, 15 years. And the promos they were dropping, Michael PSA is the color commentary back down in the days with Jim Ross, with Bill Watts territory, down there at Mid-South and Power Pro. Some of the best stuff I can ever remember watching. And again, you guys have heard me flap my gums about this for many, many, many episodes about how I used to pay my money to watch the Von Erichs fight the Freebirds. And you got to understand, man, y'all been down the road. I grew up in a damn middle-class family. We was never dirt poor, but we damn sure never had too much money either. And we always got by. So I appreciated the value of $1 just like I do today. But when I was on an athletic scholarship at North Texas State University, I'd spend my hard-earned money to go watch those Von Erichs fight the Freebirds. And me and my buddies would be out there drinking beer, throwing shit at the wrestlers, And the Freebirds came in there, and they just set that place on fire. So I couldn't be more proud of those guys, and especially, Michael PSAs to get in there because, again, man, they were front runners and one of the first acts in the history of the business to have entrance music, very charismatic, over-the-top, entertaining. And Michael PSAs was basically Michael Hayes, whatever his shoot name is, just dialed up to an 11, kind of like Stone Cold, or I should say like me, like him, because he came before me. But they were a huge influence on my career, not so much with my work style, but if you didn't watch the Freebirds and come away with something to entertain that crowd, then you're missing something just because you didn't have to throw it in your repertoire, but just to watch the way they worked the crowd, the way the crowd that responded to them, or if you just watch Bam Bam in the ring, because Bam Bam was the best in the ring, or it could be that bully promo, but whether you're listening to Michael's promo, watching their work, watching what they did together, watching how they got heat, how they sold, then you probably watched them with your eyes closed because, man, they were like a learning tree. And again, I think those guys were ahead of their time, so swig a beer or swig a Jack for Michael PSA is going in the Hall of Fame. Hey, my guest today is a very good friend of mine. His name is Paul Lazenby. He's my stunt double back when I was doing them movies up in Canada. And he wrote a book. It's called When We Were Bouncers. And this is some of the famous actors, athletes, and others who tell their insane stories of their days behind the velvet rope when they were just trying to, and a lot of these people segued into acting, MMA, pro wrestling, and they were bouncers before they, made their main living of work. And so this just, Paul, because he bounced for 20 years, after work, they'd kind of just get together and start shooting a breeze, having a couple of beers to cool off and just talk about the events. And, the idea sprang into his head is like, it's kind of like the boys after a pro wrestling match or going down the road. Just you congregate and you start telling all the damn outlandish stories and some of the things, that the fights that you've been in, the things that you've seen. This book is outstanding. And as you'll go on to hear in a conversation with Paul, I buy a couple of books a year with all intentions of reading the books, but because I got such a short attention span, most time I can't get finished with the books. Paul sent me this damn book some 6, 7, 8 months ago, I can't remember, and I got it and I was like, okay, I'll check it out. Well, finally, I forced myself to read a couple of stories, and as soon as I read a couple of stories, I started laughing out loud at some of the calamity and the bullshit, the real stuff that these guys were putting themselves into and some of the situations they found themselves in. So a book that's about 266 pages, I flew through like I was a world record reader or something. So thank you, Paul, for writing this book, and it got me back in the mood and the groove to read. Now I've got to read Bill Apter's Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broke book that he sent me. So this is an outstanding book. At the end of the podcast, you'll find out how to get it. If you don't want to get it, at least just listen to the podcast so you hear some great stories from Paul Lazenby. We'll talk about what it takes to be a bouncer, psychological makeup, physicality, all the pros and cons and bullshit that goes along with it, and we'll delve into a couple of stories. Don't want to give too many of the stories away because that would negate getting the book. Nonetheless, swig a beer to my good friend Paul Lazenby for being on the show. Anyway, I done told you all that other bullshit. Real quick last plug, if you want any of them badass T-shirts, right now the Howlin' Skull shirt is flying off the damn shelves at ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin. And you can find that and all the shirts I'm wearing on Redneck Island and Broken Skull Challenge at ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin. And that highly anticipated Swig a Beer shirt is coming up, and as soon as it does, that shirt will be available as well. But nonetheless, man, let's take care of some business, and then let's get to Paul Lazenby.
You're listening to another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show, only on PodcastOne.
Do you own a home or condo? Or perhaps you rent a house or apartment? Sure you do, and Geico knows it can be hard work. Because whether you own or rent, you still have to fill it full of your stuff. Your furniture, the flat screen, and all the boxes of stuff that have been sitting there ever since you moved in, but haven't unpacked. It's hard to find the time, right? But you know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. That way, you'll rest easy knowing that your home and all your stuff is protected, like the furniture and that flat screen. Plus, getting a quote on homeowners and renters insurance is super easy through Geico. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. You know, like going through all those boxes of stuff. Visit Geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit Geico.com today. That's Geico.com.
Steve Austin. Unleashed.
All right, we're rolling sound. I've got a video Skype going on with my old buddy. Damn near looks like my twin. Yes, he's one of the best-looking men in North America. My stunt double, Paul Lazenby from Vancouver, British Columbia. We're going to talk about When We Were Bouncers, this illustrious book that he composed or compiled with, God dang, Paul, jump in here first. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you very much. It's great to be back, man. And yes, I am one of the most good-looking men in North America. You are correct.
Hey, man, let's talk before we just start shooting a breeze. How did you come up with the idea to come up with this book?
Well, I bounced on and off for about 20 years. And one night I was sitting around at the end of a shift, and, you know, the booze comes out and we start trading war stories. And you know what it's like when a bunch of football players or wrestlers or cops or whatever get together. You start trading industry war stories. And I thought, these stories are freaking crazy. Like, normal people don't get to hear about this stuff. So I started rolling the idea around in my head to see how I could, you know, get these stories out to people that don't get to experience life from that angle. And then I realized I've been a lucky dude. You know, I've been a professional wrestler since 1991. I meet people like you and Lance Storm and Chris Jericho. I've been a stunt man. I've been a professional fighter all over the world. I get to rub shoulders with all these extraordinary people. So I thought, I'm going to go cherry pick all these people that went on to fame and fortune who used to be bouncers telling their stories from back in the day.
Man, it was an awesome book. And when I started reading this book, I was like, okay. And Paul, you gave me this book 6 months ago? A year? How long's it been?
I first told you about it when it was still being written, so that's probably why it seems like a long time ago. I think you've had a copy in your hands for a couple months.
Well, man, I tried to read it one time, but, man, I have ADD. And then I picked it up again the other day, and I started reading a couple of stories. And this thing moves so fast, and it's so easy to read, and it's over 266 pages. And I read it literally in a couple of hours. And, dude, first of all, thank you for the book, because this is the first book that I've read from front to back since the last one I read, which was about a year or 2 or 3 ago. So That's how fun to read and easy this book is. And I had the big idea that I was going to dog-ear, some of the pages to some of the highlights of the book. And I ended up with a whole book that's just been totally dog-eared. That's how many good stories are in this summit.
That is music to my ears, man. And I'm glad to hear that feedback, because I wanted this to be a book for the Twitter generation. People, this is a lot of contained short stories, a bathroom reading. It's reading on the bus. It's something you can pick up for 5 minutes and put down and come back to later.
Well, the funny thing about the bathrooms is because a lot of the stories in this book happen in the bathroom because of everything that all the bouncing entails. A lot of stuff happens in the bathroom.
Yeah, that it does. I mean, there's a particularly interesting one from a guy named Chris Davies. He's one of the less famous people in the book, but I had to put him in. He's a 4-time BC strongest man, gigantic dude, 320 pounds of muscle. And, he worked in a gay club, and he has some pretty interesting bathroom discoveries.
How long did it take you did you interview these guys on the phone and record the conversations? How did you go about transcribing this and put it in your own words? Because you do a great job setting the stories up, and then it goes into their words. I was bouncing here, but you did a great job writing the thing.
Oh, thank you very much. In some cases when I could, I would sit down. As you know, you always prefer to do things face to face if you can, because that's where you get your best interview. So I would mic the person and sit down with them at a club or at their house or something and talk to them. Of course, that's not always a possibility. So I would reach out to people and reach out to my famous friends. Then they'd put me in touch with other friends and do it over the phone. In a lot of cases, and this was a very pleasant discovery, I found that former bouncers just want to tell their stories. They got all these great stories they want to get out. I'm cold contacting people that I've never met before, and right away they're on board with the idea, and they want to give me all sorts of great stuff.
But also, it's kind of like a common bond or a common thread. It's like if you're one of the boys in the business of pro wrestling, you're one of the boys. So, the same thing, I'm guessing, I never bounced, but I'm guessing it's kind of that same brotherhood or camaraderie.
Yeah, exactly it, man. You're definitely brothers in arms to an extent. And it's like anything else. It's very much like wrestling, where there's some assholes in the locker room too, but overall you feel like you're part of the fraternity. And so if somebody comes up and says, I was a legitimate bouncer at this club back in the day, you just automatically feel a connection because you've been through some of the same stuff.
Man, I tell you what, before I was going to talk to you, I was thinking, hey, you know what? I read the book, but let me get online and kind of read a little bit about bouncing. Dude, bouncing it's kind of like the MMA world. It's come so far because back in the day, and you're almost my age, you remember back in the day, I mean, most bouncers were just the dude with a big set of arms, or maybe he's on some gas wearing a tight black shirt. So, he's 6'6", so if the dude says it's time to go, it's time to go. He might not really have any skills, so to speak. But, and these days, the bouncers, I mean, yourself included, dude, because of all the Muay Thai, your mixed martial arts background, your wrestling background, your powerlifting program, you're a well-rounded individual with respect to doing combat. But back in the day, not so much.
Yeah, it was. You had a lot of guerrilla squads back in the day, and also because cell phones are a relatively recent thing. Cell phone cameras are a relatively recent thing. And I'll tell you something, man. I'm very, very happy that they weren't around during a lot of my bouncing career, because I would have ended up behind bars for some of the stuff I was forced to do. So you had an entirely different atmosphere back then. And I actually, when I got to the point in the early 90s where I started running crews and running security for clubs, I started doing seminars because we had too many people that just thought they were there to fight, or who would just get overwhelmed when there was a big fight. And you have to have a methodology and a way to approach the job properly, so you minimize the violence, but when the violence happens, you also know what to do.
It was interesting. I was reading, that maybe, and this I'm on submissions101.com. It's talking about bouncing, the hard styles, easier style, the soft style, a humor style. But basically also, when you're dealing with an individual that may be wired a little different, maybe wired up, maybe he's had too much to drink, maybe it's a combination of a lot of things, sometimes you got to do a little psychology work there. And so tell me about these damn seminars that you started putting on, or should we first start with how you got introduced to bouncing, and is it on-the-job training, or did you take a course to learn some of the lay of the land?
Well, that's the tough thing, is that there aren't really any courses that I would say are really good. I mean, if somebody comes up to you and says, I want to be a professional wrestler, you can tell them, okay, well, go to Storm Wrestling Academy, go to Harley Races School. You've got a couple of places that they're going to go and get a good education. There's really, when I came up anyway, there was really nothing like that. I came out of the Army at like 20 years old, and I was drinking at this bar every weekend, and they needed a bouncer. So they said, oh, you want to do it? And that was it. I was on the door. Didn't even need a license at the time, which you do now in BC where I'm at. But at the time, it was just, okay, one day I'm on a bar stool, the next day I'm standing at the front door.
Okay, so tell me about the evolution of your style, technique, and your wisdom. I mean, so, you start off in wrestling business, you're green as grass, and then you 10, 15, 20 years later, you're the grizzled veteran, you know all the tricks of the trade. What was the evolution process for you, or the learning process of things to do, things not to do?
I learned it the hard way. I learned from being stupid and getting my ass kicked, wanting to be that guy who was the tough dude with his arms flared out to the sides and mean mugging everybody in the room. So I went through a couple of years of being that asshole, that bouncer that everybody hates. Yeah. And but I eventually got it whittled down, and I realized, I'm going to get stabbed or shot or arrested or something if I don't find a way to do this properly. And plus, I don't need to be ruining anybody's night that doesn't deserve to have it ruined. And everybody can make the odd mistake, and you got to come to slack. So I basically cut it down to a bouncer has to have three qualities. And I in ascending order of importance, number three, the number three most important one is physicality. What you're able to do when things get physical, when they get violent. Can you deal with violent people in a way that hopefully will not damage you or them or your coworkers? And also, picking up drunk people, anything physical. Number two is diplomacy. How well do you talk to people? How well do you get along with people? That's even more important because I can get you around violence. And number one by far is perspicacity, which is a $10 word meaning how well do you assess your surroundings? How well do you judge what's going on? How well do you read shifts in the atmosphere of the room? How well do you read the dude you're talking to? Is he trying to sucker you and then lull you into a false sense of security and then goon you? Is he behaving in a way that looks on the surface threatening, but he's not really threatening? You got to read a situation right, and you also have to read changes in your situation right to keep yourself and everybody else safe.
So when did you decide that, hey, man, I got enough knowledge that I'm going to go ahead and start doing some seminars? And how long do these seminars last, and what kind of 411 can you impart on someone?
Well, they were generally one-day seminars, and I started them because I was running security in a club called Revolution. And I've actually got a chapter in the book about a situation that happened there. And it used to be a roller rink, and then they changed it over into a nightclub. So the dance floor was so big by virtue of having been built for roller skating, you could have a fight that had like 50, 60 people involved because there was room for it. We had a big brawl that went off, and me and a guy who was then my right-hand man, Johnny, were the only ones that really knew what to do in a situation like that out of our whole big crew. And so we got hung out to dry, and we were in a bad situation for a while. So as soon as that night was over, I told everybody, every one of you is coming to this seminar at this gym that I'm also managing, and I'm going to take you guys through a situation where I put them in teams. I taught them how to work as teams, and mainly I taught them how not to be overwhelmed by a big fight. If you see a giant fight, you don't look at the whole thing and try to deal with the mountain. You chip one guy off the edge, you put him out, you take him outside, you come back in, you repeat the process until finally the fight's over. And this was in the days in the early 90s when MMA wasn't really that well known. Right. I knew about it, but not a lot of people did. So they weren't really familiar with the fact that a choke looks disturbing, but if you do it right, it's not really that bad for the person. That first fight we had after the seminar when we had people dropping bodies left, right, and center and dragging these corpses outside into the parking lot. They were fine, but they were just unconscious.
Yeah.
It disturbed the crowd, and within a month, you couldn't buy a fight in that place anymore. So that's what really got me doing seminars, realizing these people don't know what they're doing. In order to be safe, and for me to be safe, and for them to be safe, and the customers, they got to know. So I just took the bull by the horns and taught them how to work as a group.
Well, let me ask you, are you still bouncing now? Because I'm looking at your IMDb page, which we'll get back. That's Internet Movie Database page. You're busy as hell working as a stunt performer and also now doing more acting. Do you still bounce?
Absolutely not. I don't. It's funny. I always look at bouncing the way I saw a World War II veteran talking about the war. He said, I would never do it again, but I would also never have missed it. Because he values the advancement that he made in himself and going through that. And it's the same thing with bouncing. I do not miss working the door at all. I'm glad that I learned what I did through the business, but it's not something that, thankfully, with things being as busy as they are in the film industry, it's not something I've had to consider going back to.
Then those are some of the same sentiments echoed throughout the book. I mean, most of the guys, when they got out, they were like, glad to have it behind them, and they enjoyed the experience. But for many of them, it taught them a lot of who and what people were about, just because you're dealing with so many individuals. But at the end of the day, when it was time to ride off into the sunset, they were glad it was time to ride off in the sunset and get away from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good bouncer is basically has a condition called hyper-vigilance, where you're constantly aggressively assessing your circumstances and surroundings, and that bleeds out in your personal life. You know, when you go out on a date with your girl, you don't know if some dude you threw out of the club last week that you don't remember his face, you might bump into him at the movie theater. So anytime you go into a room that's full of people, whether you're at a party or anything, you're looking, where's the exits? You know, who's doing what? And it's a very tiring and exhausting way to live. So when you're young and, you know, you got a nuclear reactor burning in your chest and unlimited energy and you're all aggressive and full of piss and vinegar, that's one thing. It's kind of fun, but it does get old, and it does have a shelf life. It does get to a point where enough is enough.
Yeah, a lot of guys were saying, hey, man, it's Saturday night. You could be out with your girl or out there trying to chase women. So that was the bad part about bouncing. But one of the good parts about bouncing was the fact that a lot of guys were getting laid.
Yeah, there is that opportunity too. I mean, I bounced at, actually, that gay club that Chris Davies bounced at, I bounced at it first. It was just around the corner from my house when I first moved to Vancouver, a place called Celebrities on Davie Street. And they're a straight, friendly gay club. So when I worked there, the Friday night was like the mixed night. That's where they said, everybody come on in, straight, gay, whatever. Then the Saturday night, the name of the night was Planet Fag. That's what they named it. And it was run by two drag queens. And that was themed more like anybody could go, but it was aimed at the gay crowd. And I remember thinking, well, you know, good luck finding some companionship on a Saturday night. It actually ended up being very easy because women would go there to get away from guys trying to pick them up. They just want to hang out with gay dudes and relax. I'm there as a straight guy. They know I'm straight, but I'm supposed to be there. So I'm not threatening because I'm going to be there anyway. And it ended up being a fish in a barrel situation.
What was some of the craziest or funniest stuff you've seen in your years as a bouncer?
Well, the chapter in the book, which I don't want to spoil too much, that was one of the most inventive ways I've ever seen to run a guy out of a bar and make him never want to come back again. But I think probably the Purple Onion in Vancouver, when I worked there, it's not around anymore, but that was a hotbed for Asian gang activity. We had a lot of Southeast Asian gangsters, Chinese gangsters that did their thing in Vancouver, and they would go to the Purple Onion in their recreational hours. So that was a tough one, man, because anytime there was a fight, like I learned really quickly, one of those scariest things in the world is seeing a 120-pound Asian guy covered in tattoos wearing a wife beater and screaming into a cell phone because, he's calling in some reinforcements. And you got to know how to deal with those situations really quick and really diplomatically.
Theo Rossi had some great stories in the book from Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, yeah, man. He got really philosophical, man. We talked for about 2.5 hours, and I got some great stuff out of him. He's not he's a very athletic guy, but he's not a really big guy, so people are surprised to hear he did some security work. But, he grew up fighting. He grew up in
that was his whole thing. They grew up on the East Coast, and all of a sudden he comes out here, and people were a little bit on the soft style compared to what he'd been dealing with. And, man, it was nothing to throw a beat down on somebody out on the West Coast because it was more of a, hey, I got big arms. It was kind of, puff your chest up, but not with him. He's going to knock your lights out just because, hey, he's going to sell it the way they were brought up fighting.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a disagreement on the East Coast where he's from, then you come to blows and you sort it out, and you end up drinking beers together afterward more often than not. But on the West Coast, he was saying it's a lot of bumping chests and yelling at each other and waiting for the bouncer to show up and get between you. And he said when you go to violence as an answer to a conflict, they look at you like you're an animal because they're just not used to it in that particular part of the world. And that very much set him and his friends apart from a lot of the other bouncers in LA when they first got there, is that these are the guys you don't want to mess with because you get in their face and they're going to make you pay for it.
What was one of your fears back in the day? Because to me, if you stopped, how long ago did you stop, Paul?
I had my last shift, I think it was New Year's Eve 2011 or 2012, but it had gotten really spotty by then. I stopped bouncing on the regular around 2003.
There's a story, too, in the book about a broken bottle. And anybody who's been around bars knows that the old crash the bottle over a table, and all of a sudden you've got the neck or the mouth of the bottle, and it makes for a hell of a stabbing weapon. I mean, when you do that, that's some serious shit because you've got something very sharp in your hand. So how bad, what was your biggest fear? The broken bottle, someone carrying a knife, someone with skills, or someone who was batshit crazy? What did you not want to deal with the most?
With me, the most, it was weapons. I've had to deal with bigger, I've had to deal with badder, and I was lucky enough to be ahead of the curve too. Is that I was training at one of the best mixed martial arts schools in the world in the late 90s. I was in Japan training with the best shoot fighters in the world, so I was lucky enough to know a bit more than most of the guys in the bar at the time. And if I had to go physical, then I could. It was especially when I came to Vancouver. With there being a much bigger criminal element here. And I don't want to make Vancouver sound bad. I mean, There's a lot of great people here too. But, I was always worried that, you're going to piss off the wrong guy. And there are guys near with guns, there are guys near with knives. And that's all been cleaned up a lot by the Bar Watch program since then. But during my day of like the late 90s, early 2000s, you would get a lot of dudes in the bar. And if you don't make friends with them, then they were very, very bad guys to have as an enemy. And that was the thing for me, was just not maybe coming across a guy that, I remember having a Hell's Angel up against the wall by his shirt front. I didn't realize who he was affiliated with. And so that was my big thing, is stepping on the wrong set of toes and paying a horrible price for it.
Did the Angels come back?
Thankfully, no. It got resolved pretty quick because the guy who was his superior walked up and said, "What the hell happened?" And I just looked at the dude against the wall and went, "Dude, why did you not tell me you were with him? Because if you told me you were with him, I would let you in." And that made the big guy feel good, and everything blew over. But, that could have been pretty nasty.
So what was your style as a bouncer? Hard style, soft style, a little bit of humor? Because you're a smart guy. You wouldn't know it by some of the conversations that we have. You're one of the only human beings that's ever been invited to the Broken Skull Ranch, but you're a smart guy. So what was your go-to MO? I mean, you had the formative stuff with the Mad Dog look. How did it end up evolving?
Well, and the Mad Dog looks at that was my secondary weapon. Was I figured out pretty quick that when you look like somebody who can annihilate somebody and then you're friendly to them, they love you even more. Because when they first look at you, like, I don't like that dude, scares me. And then you come over and you're super friendly with them, then the pendulum swings way in the other direction, more so than it would be if you were just a normal guy being friendly. So it was just trying to be friendly with everybody, and I ended up getting around my fear because I ended up making friends with some serious gangster guys without even knowing who they were at first, and that steered me around potential trouble. But the number one thing for me was giving respect even when it's not due. There's a lot of guys in there that got their beer muscles on, they got the girl by the side, or they're trying to pick up a girl, or they're trying to impress their buddies. And if you go over and the guy's a complete douchebag, and he's just been acting like an asshole all night, but you just walk up and you whisper in his ear, he knows you're bigger and tougher than him and you work there, and you go, "Look, dude, no disrespect. I know you're a bad dude. I don't want to get into it with you, but I'm sorry, dude. Yes, it's more than my job is worth. I got to ask you to leave, please, and come back next week." And it's like an excrement sandwich in your mouth when you say it, but as often as not, you'll get the guy to walk out without throwing a punch, and that's what the job's all about.
this book ends up with a chapter by Bas Rutten,
Yeah.
who's got some of the most famous bar stories in the history of the world, and you can only put a couple of them in the book. But how fun was it to talk to Bas? Because, man, that dude, you're a bad dude in your own right. Bas is kind of like at a whole different solar system. So how did you talk to Bas? I know you guys are lifelong friends or longtime friends. Well, was that conversation in person? Did you call him on the phone?
Yeah, I called him on the phone, but we talk at least once a week. So it was just another conversation with Bas. And what did surprise me was this. Even I didn't realize the depth of stories that this guy has, because I haven't known Bas since 1997, and we fought in the same group in Japan. And I was a sparring partner for a little while. So, we go way back, and I've heard a lot of these stories before. And I said, yeah, what about telling me this story, Bas? And he goes, yeah, okay, but I'll tell you this one too. And it was some stuff I'd never heard before that was just completely insane. This guy really is, in my mind, after 20 years of bouncing, he's the most impressive bouncer I've ever met, man. The guy was just not to be messed with at all.
Well, I love to go on the YouTube stuff and watch his Tips to a Fight or whatever it's called. But, man, that dude, he was kind of like, to me, in the world of MMA, Paul, you tell me. I think, back in the day, WWE made a documentary of Billy Graham, 20 years too soon. He was ahead of his time. Mm-hmm. To me, Bas was almost ahead of his time for his skill set and everything that he could do. Because imagine a healthy young Bas in today's landscape. How do you think he'd do?
I think that Bas Rutten, a young Bas Rutten today would be fighting at middleweight, and he would wreck everybody in the UFC middleweight division. I think that he is one of the deadliest people ever to walk the face of the earth, and not just the fact that he can punch hard and that he can kick hard. It's his instincts, it's his reflexes, it's the way his mind works. This guy started learning how to grapple at a very late age, and not only learned how to do it effectively enough that he was submitting some of the best submission fighters in the world, but he started developing his own techniques. You got the Bas Rutten exorcist neck crank and the Bas Rutten, lay on your back neck crank. You got a bunch of moves that are even named after him. The guy is just, I don't think you're going to find a more important person in the evolution of mixed martial arts than Bas Rutten.
Well, I think his fighting background was part and parcel with his bouncing background or career. But in talking with that guy, and I've only had a few kind of conversations with Bas face-to-face, and obviously don't know him near as well as you do, but, man, as soon as you start talking about a situation, I mean, dude, he's like a supercomputer. I mean, he has a solution already in his head. All these fight techniques, whether it's a low blow, I don't want to say a low blow, but I mean an underhanded move or just something. Here's the thing. When you mess with Bas, he's not going to, he's there to finish the fight.
Yes, and that's something that I always envied, and it's something that you see in guys like Bas Rutten and Vanderlei Silva, where they're like attack dogs. You see a well-trained pit bull that's friendly, and you can leave your kids with them and everything. But when that instinct is triggered, and that pit bull decides it's time to fight, he turns into a completely different animal. And I've seen that happen with Bas Rutten, never under circumstances that didn't justify it. But yeah, once he clicks into that fight mode, everything about him, every atom in his body is geared toward the most efficient way to destroy whoever's in front of him.
There's a great story in the book by Bas, and he's talking about he kicks this guy, he takes him down, and then he's got some steel-toe boots on, and he's just, one final kick, and he goes to punt this guy right in the face, and the guy ends up falling out of the way or maybe forward, and Bas misses him. And he's glad that he missed him because had he kicked him, he says in the book, he'd have been dead. So It was a good thing that the guy fell out of the way, because who knows what would happen because of that. But anyway, if you're out there, Bas Rutten is one of the nicest human beings on planet Earth, as Paul can attest to, but don't fuck with him and anger him. It will be the worst decision you ever made in your life.
Absolutely, man. I could not agree with more with both of those statements, man. Nobody has any reason to be afraid of Bas unless they put themselves in a position where they're forcing him to defend himself or somebody he cares about, in which case they should be extremely afraid.
All right, Paul, let's talk about your fight records, not with your MMA career or your pro wrestling career. Let's talk about your one-loss record in the game of bouncing. You said every now and then you get or in the book, a lot of these guys admit, hey, man, every now and then you're going to get your ass handed to you. That's just the way it is. So how was your record? I mean, I know you keep score, but how about the times you're victorious versus the time you literally get your ass stomped?
Well, it's I always considered bouncing to be a job where it's not your job to fight fair. So that's another thing I taught in my seminars is when it's time to deal with somebody physically, when you have no other option, you're not the gunslinger that has to go out back with the guy one-on-one and square off and have a square up bare-knuckle match. That's not your job. So with me, I was always trying to range it so it was 2-on-1 and 3-on-1. And I don't mean holding the guy down and curb stomping him. I mean just getting enough bodies on him and people who know how to work in concert that you can drag his ass out of there. So the times that I got my ass stomped, it was usually because of numbers. And again, I've been beat one-on-one in the ring a lot, so I'm not saying I'm all that. But in bar fights, it was generally because either the people I was working with didn't understand how to work as a group of bouncers, or we just were overwhelmed by superior numbers and there was too many people to deal with.
What's the worst injury you suffered in your career as a bouncer?
That would probably be, let's see, scratched retina. No, I lost a tooth when I was 23 years old. This was one of those lessons I had to learn. I was working at the Fox and Firkin on Electric Avenue in Calgary, and we had basically a full-blown riot. It was one of the worst fights I've ever seen as a bouncer. And there was one dude who actually had already been ejected. He was out of the club, technically not our problem anymore. And one of the other bouncers was standing in the doorway to keep the guy from coming back in. And he was beaking off, and my blood was flowing, and I was a big, tough guy. I pushed past the dude and went outside, which you never, ever do as a bouncer. And I got in the guy's face, and he reared back and headbutted me and knocked out my front tooth. So that was probably the worst thing I got outside of various concussions and stuff.
Dude, and that's the thing. The headbutt is such a devastating weapon. And there's a great story in the book about Bas getting headbutted. But because the guy that was headbutting him had both arms around two women, he wasn't able to propel himself hard enough. So, boom, Bas absorbed the blow, and then bam, bam, as Bas would say, just decimated the guy. And he goes, that stupid guy. He couldn't headbutt me because he had his arm around the two women. I mean, that's his assessment of the situation. So how prevalent is the headbutt in the club scene when you were active? Because, dude, I mean, that's the kind of thing when you're caught off guard by that and someone bangs the front of their head into your grill, into your teeth, your nose, just a devastating attack, which to me, when you headbutt a dude, I mean, that's with severe intent and malice. If a dude was to headbutt you just because, hey, you're trying to remove him from the club, I mean, to me, that's worse than a low blow.
Yeah, it's something that you're using the hardest part of your skull to smash right into their face, and you're going to break something. I mean, it's
absolutely.
Not like if you punch a guy in the stomach, odds are an hour later he's going to be not even an hour later he's going to be fine. But you headbutt a guy, he's going to be at least wearing that for a while, if not worse. And so that's another thing that I always kept in mind is guys let bar fights escalate in a certain way that's really stupid. They'll press their chests up against each other and lift their chin and drop their hands. They're basically presenting you with a plethora of targets.
Yes.
The only way that's a good strategy is because you're confusing your opponent by giving him so much to hit he might not be able to choose. And it leaves you wide open for headbutts because the faces are usually close together. So in cases like that, one thing I used to teach is dropping your chin and tilting your head to the side. So you're kind of presenting your eyebrow to the person first. If they headbutt you forward, they're going to hit the hardest part of your skull, up on the corner of your head by your forehead. And at the same time, it puts people off. That actually diffused a lot of situations just because it looks funny. Like, what is this guy setting up to do? But, yeah, you really do have to watch headbutts. They're a go-to move for guys who are drunk and don't know better and in that environment because it's a very readily available attack.
All right, I'm talking to Paul Lazenby, my old stunt double back in my Vancouver, British Columbia days. Had a lot of fun with him. Paul, I was on your website. Your website is not up to date. Should we tell people to go to paullazenby.com?
No, I've shut that one down. Now I'm doing all my stuff out of whenwewere.bouncers.com.
Hey, Paul, I was doing research about the bouncer thing, but then I was looking at one guy, and if you're approaching a guy, are you keeping your hands at chest level, or are they down by your side? What are you trying to do with your hands?
I used a trick that I actually learned from a couple of guys I bounced with who were my first martial arts instructors, Dave Lawton and Pseudo Krya. And they practiced a style of martial arts that was 100% street applicable. They had no desire to compete. It was all about fighting in the street. And they would always say, have a coin, have a book of matches, have something that will keep your hands up around your chest. That way you don't look like you're getting ready to defend, but at the same time your hands are close to your face, because you don't want to have to swing them up from your waist and waste all that extra time when somebody's trying to attack your head or attack your chest. Your hands are up and they're ready to go, but they don't look like you're setting up for anything.
Right. So.
Yeah, so up around the chest.
Okay. I was just wondering about that because I was watching, just doing all the different stuff, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. And, yeah, you don't look like you're going on the fence, but you're ready.
Yeah.
Hey, man, do you want to talk about any of these stories in the book? Do you want to give any of this stuff away?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, there's over 100 stories in there, so we give a couple away. I don't think it's going to be ruining anything.
What were some of your favorites?
You know what? There's let's see. I like Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
You know, that dude had a really good take, and he knows how to tell a story. He's got some great ideas about, and he also talked both about the physical side and about crawling inside somebody's head and getting them to do what you want them to do. You know, pulling Jedi mind tricks on people. So I think Samoa Joe's chapter is a lot of fun. Our mutual buddy Diamond Dallas Page had some great stories from back in the 70s, man. That's even before my time. And I think the craziest story out of the entire book, and that's a neck-and-neck race with a lot of horses in it, might come from a guy named John Rollo. And he is the guy who got professional mixed martial arts sanctioned in the state of Maryland. He's a Renzo Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt, mixed martial arts fighter who looks like a world's strongest man competitor. The guy's a nightmare. And, his story involves a fight between 4 bouncers holding aluminum baseball bats and 2 perpetrators holding chainsaws. That is one of the wildest things I've ever seen. I would have called BS on it if I didn't know John personally.
Hey, man, you were in the Renzo Gracie chapter. You give him great respect, as the whole Gracie family give respect. But you say most of them, I guess the Gracies, I don't know if they have a bad rep, but maybe it's a little bit of arrogance. You like, the Gracies are kind of.
Yeah, there's. But
everybody says, but not Renzo.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are people who love the Gracies. There are people who hate the Gracies. There are people who are in the middle. Bottom line, they deserve respect. They're like the hearts in pro wrestling. They're just like the first family of mixed martial arts. And I get along with every Gracie I've met. I've gotten along with.
Right.
But even people who don't like the Gracies, who for whatever reason have their toes stepped on by a Gracie family member or took offense to something, like Kazushi Sakuraba, the mixed martial arts legend who's now in pro wrestling. He's one of those guys where they called him the Gracie Hunter because he was beating one Gracie after the other. He also fought Renzo, and he'll always say, he'll say he doesn't particularly care for the Gracie family, but not Renzo. Renzo's all right. I dig that dude. Yeah. And he is, man. You ever get to meet Renzo, man, he is one of the friendliest dudes you ever met. But again, just like in the Bas Rutten mold, and it's no coincidence those guys are friends.
Yeah.
You mess with Renzo, you just threw a match into a pit of gasoline, man. You better be ready to deal with it.
It was funny how he got his first job. He was a teenager, and him and another guy were at I guess we might as well call it a whorehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, some guy was having some trouble, and him and his buddy smashed the guy up. And all of a sudden, the owner says, "Hey, man, would you guys work for me?" And so he was in heaven because they gave him a place to live. He had the fringe benefits for free, and he had plenty of food. So that was his indoctrination into the world of bouncing before he got into the big into the MMA career that he was going to have.
How many guys do you know who are 14 years old bouncing in a whorehouse in the Amazon jungle, man? That is one of the. And also, I included one story that doesn't have anything to do with bouncing, but I had to put it in there. Renzo Gracie is actually the first guy in history to live tweet his own attempted mugging while it was happening.
I love that story. You got to tell the story about what happened there.
Oh, man. Well, Renzo was walking out of a restaurant, and he's on Twitter, and he notices, this is in New York, he notices there's 2 guys following him, and they're kind of creeping on him. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So instead of doing what most of us would do and staying to well-lit areas, maybe ducking into a store, maybe calling the cops, whatever, Renzo gets on Twitter and goes, 2 guys following me. He takes a picture of a deserted street and goes, "I'm going to go down here because they'll follow me for sure. This is awesome. This is just like at home in Brazil." They catch up with him, man. He knocks one dude out when they go for his wallet. The other guy runs away, gets back on Twitter, takes a picture of the guy whose ass he just kicked. Then he gets in his car, chases the other dude down, chokes him out, puts it back on Twitter again. There is a whole Twitter saga you can search online, and it's all in the book as well, front to back, from Hensel's own mouth.
It was funny because after that story happened, there was another guy who started following him and was asking him if he had a lighter. And Renzo called bullshit on that, and I think he turned him away too, according to the book. But yeah, it's funny because you can get all these great, like you said, that one didn't pertain to bouncing, but all of a sudden you see a guy like a Renzo walking the streets of New York City and say, hey man, this guy's not too bulky. I'm a thug. I can take his cat. And dude, when you have out of this solar system skills like he does, you done fuck with the wrong guy.
And that's where bouncing has changed. I mean, like I said, I had the luxury of being ahead of the curve in that respect when I was bouncing, but now you don't know who knows what. And the days of Sparta and the gladiator schools, they're back. I go to FKP MMA, my home club, and I'll see what 10-year-old kids are doing that is in advance of anything I ever did in the ring, man. We are breeding warriors, and now thankfully it's being done right, and in far more cases than not, where you're teaching those kids how to manage their skills properly. But we are breeding kids to be comfortable with dealing with violent situations if they have to, and having a vast array of skills how to deal with it. Those people grow up. You see that guy in the club, he might not look like anything. He might also be a killing machine. So it really does serve you to be nice to everybody.
Right. Hey, how has the fact that everybody has a smartphone that's got a camera recorder on it, how has that changed the face of bouncing? Because back in the day, when you first started, and when I dare say not everybody was so happy, looking for a handout, just what you could get away with, or how it's changed the business.
Oh, it's definitely a lot tougher for bouncers now in that respect, because everybody's going to get their camera out. I mean, the sad fact is bouncers share one thing with cops, which is that a lot of people have had what they consider to be a negative experience with both, and it kind of colors the way they look at all of them. And so if they see a bouncer punching somebody in their face, they might not try to look deeper into the situation and see, well, did that guy put the bouncer in a situation where he had no other option? They're immediately going to go to the thought that that bouncer is bullying this dude and tuning him up. And I'm going to put this on World Star, I'm going to put this on TMZ, or I'm just going to record it and send it to the cops. And all of a sudden, as a bouncer, you get all kinds of hassles and headaches and maybe jail time. Now, on the other side of the coin, we got something, at least in Vancouver, called the Bar Watch program, which I would imagine they got an equivalent of in places like L.A., where they scan your ID, they take your picture when you first walk in, and that's kind of made it tough for a lot of unscrupulous individuals to go to clubs, and everybody knows they're under this constant surveillance. So violence in local clubs has really gone down. And thankfully, bouncers have less violence to deal with. So that back end of when they do have to deal with violence, having to deal with the cell phones, thankfully, it's not as frequent as it used to be. But I'll tell you, like I said before Bar Watch, if they had cell phones, like in my day with some of the stuff I had to do to defend myself and protect myself and other patrons, I probably would have done jail time by now.
Dude, I ain't been to the club in I don't know how long, but these days, if I go down to Vegas to the SHOT Show or something like that, a few times I go to Vegas, there's cameras everywhere. There's probably cameras everywhere in clubs these days. So is there a guy now solely dedicated to watching the club cameras, to look at areas? Because everybody probably wearing earpieces these days, correct?
Yeah, it's quite common to see everybody hooked up by earpieces. And, we always had the flashlight system, too, where you'd use a mag light to signal everybody else. I would imagine maybe in some of the really big clubs you might have full security set up with a bank of monitors and somebody watching it. But for the most part, I think it's just recorded so that if something does happen, you can go back and get the footage and you've got it for all the wonderful legal proceedings that are going to follow.
Dude, I can't remember. I think it's another Renzo Gracie story. Wasn't he working security at a concert or something? He was working one gate, and he heard about all the calamity at another gate. So he was standing there with his shirt off. So basically he runs into the fight without a shirt on, beats the shit out of the bad guy, runs back to his post, and puts his shirt back on, and nobody knows what's happening.
Yeah, he said there was press around, so nobody could deal with this guy because they didn't want to beat him up in front of the camera. So the stadium was so big, they didn't know he was a security guy from halfway across the stadium. He's just some crazy dude with his shirt off, come in, tune the guy up, and leave. And that became his MO for a while. He would do that at every job.
Oh, it's a great story. The name of the book is When We Were Bouncers by Paul the Mauler Lazenby. Paul, how can people find this book?
Well, you can easily find it at whenwewerebouncers.com. It's on Amazon. Also, if you're a supporter of the show, you can go to the Steve Austin Show page at podcastone.com, hit the Amazon link first, and then buy When We Were Bouncers after that. And then you don't pay any extra money, but you're supporting the Steve Austin Show, which I wholeheartedly advocate. If you're in Vancouver, you can pick it up at FKP MMA. Just go to fkpmma.com. You can also get it in downtown Vancouver at International News, which is in the Sheraton Wall Center in Vancouver. And also at the Stunts Canada office if you happen to work in or near the Bridge Studio in Burnaby. So those are the hot spots to get in Vancouver. Otherwise, just go to Amazon and you can pick it up there, whenwewerebouncers.com.
Yeah, and this, once again, it's When We Were Bouncers. Famous actors, athletes, and others tell insane, and that's underlined, stories of their days behind the velvet rope. I really enjoyed the shit out of the book. Before we get out of here, man, let's talk about what you're doing right now, man. I'm on your IMDb page. And, dude, you've been around a long time. Stunts, over 127 credits. Acting, now that's coming up. How many acting credits? Over 67 credits. Right now, are you working on War of the Planet of the Apes and Tomboy: A Revenger's Tale?
I finished on both of them.
Yep.
I did some behind-the-scenes work on Planet of the Apes and then on Tomboy. That's a really bizarre story, man, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come out.
What is it about?
It's about a hitman. I don't know how much I can go into, but it's about a hitman. It stars Michelle Rodriguez, Sigourney Weaver. It's directed by Walter Hill, who's just an absolute legend of the business, man, and a great dude. He loves to talk fights. So that was a pleasure to work on. I can't wait for Tomboy to come out. It looks like a great story. So I've got an on-camera role in that. I also actually just recently got to play a pro wrestler again. I love to do pro wrestling roles because that's what got me into this business is my wrestling connection.
What was a pro wrestling gig? That
was the episode of Supernatural that at the time we're taping this would have just aired. It's an episode called Beyond the Mat. And the whole episode centers around stuff that's happening in an independent wrestling organization. And I was lucky enough to land a stunt actor role as one of the wrestlers, and then I helped them to overhaul the wrestling scene and make sure it made sense and coordinate it and get in there and take a few bumps. It was a lot of fun.
So you actually had to put some psychology in the wrestling match.
Yeah, I mean, and due respect to the writer, I really appreciate the fact you want to do something about wrestling. But when I first saw the match, I thought, you know what? I'm the heel. The other guy's the babyface. Yeah. We want to make sure that comes across in both ways, and that even though we only have maybe 60, 70 seconds of screen time, this still has to follow an arc that tells you who's who and tells a story. So I think we got there in the end.
I know Monster Trucks is post-production right now. What was that all about?
That's a crazy science fiction thing. And again, it's funny, when you get some of these big movies, you can work on them for weeks, sometimes months, and not even have the slightest idea of what it's about. And this, it had a hell of a lot of great car and truck gags in it, a lot of action. There's some giant monster stuff going on, too. But that's about the full gist of what I was able to glean from working on it, man. I was just running away trying not to get blown up and killed most of the time.
Dude, I've known you for a long time, and I've known you for your stunt work. But right here on Star Trek Beyond says you're a wire technician.
Yes.
What all does that involve? And do you have to be certified to are you setting up wires, or you're hooked to wires doing stunts?
I'm actually on the pulley end. Now, it seems like a kind of a primitive way to do it to some people, but it really does work well, is when you got people, performers, going up on harnesses and on wires and flying around. And I do that bit, too. A lot of the time, it's hooked up to a machine. A lot of the other time, it's hooked up to a dude holding a pulley, or two or three, because it's intricate and it's timing intensive, and sometimes you need a human being who can make those minute adjustments on the fly. And that's the job I've been doing the longest. I did that. I started as a wire technician and worked my way into being a stunt guy. So that's what I was doing on that show is a lot of wire tech work. And I got a couple on-camera days, one as an alien and a couple as a crewman. But most of the time it was pulling ropes behind the scenes.
Obviously, as you get up in the years, with as much as you love the stunt stuff, I would imagine you're trying to gravitate more towards the acting side of things in front of the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I should have started taking seriously sooner, but started taking seriously around 2007, and it's been going really well. I'm kind of in a lucky spot where there's not a lot of guys of my size who are also have put a lot of work into their acting. Usually guys like me are garden variety thug or cop or whatever. But when you want to slot them into a more dramatic role or something like that, it really does thin down the herd. And I'm lucky enough to be one of those people that gets called in to get looked at when there's a role that they want to book in that respect. So it's getting busier and busier. You know, my acting work is almost 50% of what I do now. And it's growing and growing. So the plan is progressing nicely, and the plan is that when I get too old to take a bump, then I'll be able to just seek full time into acting and not miss a beat.
You're figured in pretty good in the loop there in Vancouver, so I'm sure you get offered a lot of stuff. How are you with respect to going in and doing the reading process and auditioning?
I love it. You know, it's
you look forward to it.
Yes,
I hated it. I thought it sucked ass. Tell me why you embrace it. I'm happy for you because it's nice to hear someone likes it.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I think I benefited in a way from having a really stupid mindset toward acting when I first started. You know, I always used to say, I'm not an actor. I'm a stunt man. I'm not an actor. And then one day a buddy of mine went, well, why are you not an actor, man? That's like a whole second career you could have. And I realized, yeah, you're right. But by that point, when I did fall over sideways and I get an audition, I would just go in and I'd do the best job I could, but didn't really put a lot of weight on whether or not I got it. And I still maintain that mindset where I'm not walking into that room looking to do a job. To me, it's more acting practice, and it's sharpening my tools as an actor. So it would be kind of like getting a tryout for WWE when you know that they don't really care and they're not even going to be watching and stuff. But you get to at least go in and take a few bumps in the WWE ring or hang out at the Performance Center for a while and soak up some more knowledge and sharpen your tools a bit more. That's kind of what I look at auditions as. And then if I get the role, then it's just a bonus. It's fantastic.
Man, it's interesting. I did an episode of Chuck years ago, and I met this young lady. She was 33 years old at the time, and she was already in the actors studio, some type of highly acclaimed group that you have to be selected in. So I was having a conversation with her between shots, and she says, who do you study with? And I'm like, well, I don't really study. And she goes, why not? I said, well, I don't know why not. I just remember my lines and I show up and boom. I said, what are you talking about? And she was telling me she's been acting since she was 3 from commercials, and now she's probably 38. But she still studies with a group of people, and they'll go through scenes, dialogue, the whole gamut. She goes, this is just like you going to the gym. You go to the gym every day to stay in shape, right? And I said, yeah. And she go, this is what I do. And so that's how she stays sharp. I mean, and this chick was bad. It was just a simple role on Chuck, but I mean, she's in, some of the number 1 shows on television, but I didn't comprehend it, but I get it now.
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs maintenance, and it's also, again, it's a performance art, just like being a wrestler is. And as you know, you can always become a better pro wrestler.
Well, to your point, you get out of the ring and you go back, ring rust.
Yep.
Acting rust, same shit.
Yeah, precisely. And there's always somewhere to go. There's always something to learn, and I'm always keeping an eye on the people I'm working with, because I've never worked on a show and not learned something from the people around me. And so it's something that if you do take it seriously, then it is something that you have to train in, and you have to continue to try to advance yourself. And luckily, unfortunately in wrestling, there comes a day where you can't take a bump anymore, whereas in acting, you can do that stuff until the day you die, if you die at 102.
All right, dude, I want to talk to you real quick. I'm on your bio page on IMDb, Paul Lazenby. In the picture, Paul has a goatee. Strikingly good-looking young man. Looks just like me. Right now, as I'm talking to you, shaved off the goatee. First question, why'd you shave off the goatee?
Initially, it was for Star Trek. They wanted me to play a crewman, and there was no facial hair involved. And then I ended up getting 1 or 2 other jobs where they wouldn't have minded the goatee, but it wasn't fully grown, and I couldn't show up with 3 days growth. So I shaved it again. And then vanity took over, because I had people pulling me aside. And I had come down from a full beard for Star Trek, actually, and they said, "Look, you look a lot younger without the beard." Like, okay, that's it. Beard's gone. Yeah. I'm at the age now where I need to latch on to any opportunity I can to look younger. So
what do you prefer? Goatee, no goatee?
I actually prefer the goatee, but I do find that I seem to get offered a wider range of stuff when I'm clean shaven. So I'm keeping it off for professional reasons.
Right. And speaking of having to shave off your gimmick for a movie, when I signed on to do The Longest Yard way back in the day, I was going to be a prison guard when Adam Sandler's movie. So they, dude, that's my trademark is a goatee. So I'm figuring, I'm Stone Cold Steve Austin. They're not going to tell me to shave my shit off. Wrong. Hey, Steve, you need to cut off your goatee. And, oh, by the way, I was going to kind of go Fu Manchu with it, so I'd still have, a little bit of je ne sais quoi. And so they said, dude, in a federal prison, your mustache cannot go, beyond the corners of your lips. So I had this stupid-ass mustache from what it used to be compared with that goatee. And so I'm training at World Gym right down here in Marina Del Rey when Joe Gold still ran that gym. And that's where I met my illustrious wife, Kristen, who you know very well. And you're like her favorite guest because when Paul comes to your house, this guy actually takes his shoes off before he comes into your crib, unless you tell him, hey, man, it's cool. So you're like one of my wife's favorite guests when and if you ever come over. But I had to meet Kristen with that bullshit mustache. So, man, I didn't really have my full game, and so I didn't have that confidence. So, man, I missed the goatee, but I ended up marrying her, so it ended up with a happy ending to the story.
That should be reassuring because with impaired game, you still landed your wife.
Yeah, got that going for me. Hey, before we ride off into the sunset, here in your bio, you're certified. You and me love to talk UFC. You obviously used to be in MMA and still are an avid fan. You're certified as a professional MMA judge by Big John McCarthy's Command organization. Tell me about that certification, and that goes with being a referee or scoring a fight.
Well, he does courses for both. The referee course is tougher. I took the judges course.
Okay.
None of it's mandatory at this point, but I think that athletic commission should make it mandatory. And I just figured, Big John McCarthy was I was part of a group at the time called Mixed Martial Arts Association in British Columbia. We were handling or overseeing amateur MMA in the province, and we brought Big John in for a seminar to educate everybody on how to judge the fights. So, of course, they're going to take advantage. Big John is literally the guy who wrote the book. He is the primary author of the Unified Rules of Mixed Martial Arts. Who better to learn from on how to judge these fights? And I learned a ton. I thought, I've been fighting in mixed martial arts at the world level, man. I've been doing this since before almost anybody. I had my first fights. I think I had my first fight before Tito Ortiz had his in mixed martial arts. And, man, I learned how much I didn't know. And I learned how to properly judge a fight. I think every mixed martial arts judge, every mixed martial arts referee, anybody who wants to do either job should take Big John's course. And I think you can find it at MMAreferee.com.
All right, a couple of these other facts here. Played one of Stone Cold Steve Austin's opponents in the underground fighting movie Damage, suffered a broken nose during filming. We talked about this a couple of years ago. God damn, I'm swinging for the fence, and I barely grazed Paul with my pinky. What was it, left or a right that I caught you with?
That was a left.
It was a left, and goddamn swinging door left, and all of a sudden I just say, oh, shit. And Paul looks at me and says, keep going. And then we keep swinging, and all of a sudden blood just starts pouring out of his nose. And it's like, dude, once again, I want to apologize to you for that. But also stunt double for former WWE wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin for the movies The Stranger, Hunt to Kill, Tactical Force, Recall, Maximum Conviction, and A Package. 60% of those movies I'd tell you to stay away from. But nonetheless, during the filming of those movies, we had an absolute blast. Those were lower budget movies, but goddamn, it was fun.
You know what, man, and this is not blowing sunshine up your skirt. This is something that I say behind your back all the time. If I had to pick one singular career highlight from my 15 years in the business, it'd be doubling you. Because the person who's number one on the call sheet, and for people not in the industry, basically the number you have on the call sheet that they send out every day determines your hierarchy on the show. So number one on the call sheet is considered to be the most important actor on the cast. And you were number one on the call sheet for all your movies. Number one dictates the mood on set. They basically determine what kind of a day everybody else is going to have. If they're deciding to be a diva and high maintenance, or they're pissed off about something and taking it out on everybody else, everybody on set, if you got a crew of 200 people, they're probably all going to have a bad day. In your case, dude, you were respectful to like the PA who's wearing a reflective vest, watching cars out in the parking lot. Got the same amount of respect as anybody else because, if they didn't show you disrespect, you didn't show it to them. And to this day, man, you are not going to find anybody in Vancouver that's worked with you and has a bad word to say. So thank you for, that was a hell of a run, and that was the best part of my career, I think.
Well, I was actually taking LSD during the filming of those movies.
That was the best part, man. You were always dropping extras, man, so I got some for free.
I'm kidding. Hey, before I let you off a hook, man, you've been in some blockbuster movies. I mean, some big budget movies, The Chronicles of Riddick, I, Robot, Percy Jackson, The Olympians, The Lightning Thief, along with the other stuff that I mentioned. Dude, do you prefer the gigantic big budget stuff, the television stuff? What's your sweet spot, or you just enjoy it all?
I enjoy it all because everything has its own benefit. Like on big budget movies, the money's a little better. The days tend to be longer, so the money gets even better there. So and also you can have fun. I mean, if it's a huge stunt budget, well, that means that the stunt coordinator gets to play a little bit and you get to do bigger stuff and crazier stuff. Now, on smaller budget stuff like what we did, the pressure doesn't seem to be as high, and you're not under the studio's microscope as much. They're not expecting as much.
Right.
I'm not saying you phone it in and you're shit in the bed necessarily, but when the studio sets the bar low and then you exceed it, then you look like a rock star, and you can do so in a much less pressurized environment. So that there's benefits to both. I know guys that they make less doing TV, but they prefer TV. They just prefer the whole vibe to doing big budget blockbusters. I like doing it all.
Dude, there was a couple of times you were going to jump on. What's that springboard platform that you would jump on? It's like a diving board, and then it shot up and threw you over the car.
Oh yeah, it's called an air ram. It's a compressed air-driven catapult.
Dude,
yeah, that was the scariest gag I ever did in my career. Actually, that was the first time I doubled you for The Stranger.
Yeah, and dude, I just remember that day because if you hit that thing wrong or your legs are straightened out all the way and that air ramp, boom, it's like, how would you describe it, Paul, so we can give people a visual of it?
Well, it's basically a catapult, so it's bolted into the ground, and then there's a giant paddle that's attached to a lever arm, and it's either pressure activated where you run up to it and you step on it and then it throws you. The catapult goes up and you have to ride it properly. But when you see explosions and the stunt man is running and then there's an explosion and they fly up and forward, they're generally stepping on a concealed air ramp. Now, in the case of the gag that I was doing for you, your character was trying to get his family out of a burning car.
Of course.
As portrayed by blow-up sex dolls, which is a whole other story. But I was standing on it and having my buddy Chad Bellamy trigger it from off to the side. And you got to trust the dude to have him do that, because if his timing's off, I can get seriously messed up. And they're blowing pyrotechnic flames in my face at the same time, so I got to do it blind, and I got to turn my head away from camera while I'm in the air. Plus, I don't know if I told you this, but I damn near broke my neck rehearsing for that. When we were rehearsing, I lost my compass in the air, purely my fault, and I landed on the pad wrong and came dangerously close to my neck snapping. So on the day, I'm doing it to the lawn with no pads, and I got that in my head too, is I better stick this landing and do it right. And I remember Lash, the stunt coordinator, he actually went over to the director and went, "Look, dude, count on getting one of these, all right? I'm not going to make him do it again. Yeah. And to be honest, it's dangerous, so you might only get one anyway."
Dude, half the shit we did that was so dangerous. But then let's speak about that dramatic moment when I'm coming home from work and the Russians have, blown up my wife and my daughter and our Ford Explorer, which was a piece of shit, in the driveway of this house that we were shooting at. And, of course, I'm driving some slick-ass car because I'm a hotshot in the movie. Meanwhile, my wife in the movie has a bucket of shit to drive, so the car's on fire. But before we did all that, we show up, and to Paul's point, the two people sitting in the car were blow-up sex dolls with the gimmick mouths wide open. They've got lipstick on them. If they get them dressed, they have wigs on. It's like... The director walked up. I can't remember that guy's name. Is Rob something.
Lieberman, I think.
Rob Lieberman walked up to the car, and he said, "God damn it, Tara, you have undercut me at every step along the way. I cannot deal with this schlock any longer." 15 minutes later, we're rolling camera with the blow-up sex dolls. I'm crying like a baby because I can't get in the burn-up Ford Explorer to save my precious wife and baby girl. It was absolute, and the pathos, the emotion that I was able to get as I watched those rubber dolls disintegrate and burn in front of my eyes. Paul is one of the, you know me, I'm method.
Dude, I think it demonstrates your range as an actor. I really do.
God damn it! I think they're going to do Titanic 2, and I might be in front of Leo DiCaprio to play this character.
Dude, he's only got an Oscar. You got pathos with blow-up sex dolls. I think what you got trumps what he's got.
Dude, I'm telling you, I smell money, but it's not with me. It's not with me in the number one spot of any movies. Hey, Paul, it was great talking to you. The name of the book is When We Were Bouncers. It's by Paul the Mauler Lazenby, my good friend, my stunt double, and a hell of a nice guy. And it's famous actors and athletes and others telling some of the insane stories of their days behind the velvet rope. Paul told you how you could find the book. If you got ADD, like me, and it's hard to read, this sumbitch is easy to read. If you just like to read, well, that shouldn't deter you either, because you'll tear through this book like it was nothing, but it's quality stuff, well written, and an awesome job. Paul, I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much, man, and I'm really glad you liked the book, man, because I know you wouldn't BS me about that.
Oh, that's good shit. Hey, Paul, I'll catch you down the road. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for joining us for another classic episode of The Steve Austin Show. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends. For more Steve Austin Show, go to PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
All this month, celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with Pluto TV. Watch movies with the biggest stars like Eugenio Derbez in No Eres Tú, Soy Yo, and Luis Gerardo Méndez in Camino a Marte. Plus, Pluto TV has thousands more movies and TV shows and over 45 channels in Spanish, all for free. So download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming today. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.
Hey guys, Jay Cutler. Started a new podcast called Uncut with Jay Cutler. Most of you know me from the NFL, some of you have seen me on Instagram, and some of you know me from the reality TV world. Each week I'm taking you along with me as we discuss football, trending topics, and whatever's going on in my life each week. I'm bringing along people that are special in my life. Former teammates, friends, and some new people that I like and respect. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Podcasting? I think I'm doing this right. Can't wait to get started with you. Go subscribe now. Uncut with Jay Cutler, Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.